Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. The Conservative Political Action Conference continues this weekend. Today, speakers and attendees discussed socialism's spread among America's youth and what some call its dangers. Lawmakers discuss the future of big tech, which they accuse of censoring some political viewpoints. The House of Representatives votes in support of placing broad restrictions on flavored vaping and tobacco products. It says the measure will help protect children from developing addiction. Hong Kong police arrest some major figures in the pro-democracy movement, including a publishing industry tycoon. And a frontline medic in China tells us what it's like being sent to work in China's coronavirus outbreak epicenter. The Conservative Political Action Conference continues. Organizers are preparing for President Trump's speech tomorrow, but today speakers discussed the impact of socialism around the world. NTD's Paul Graney asked attendees about its spread among America's youth.
A recent poll shows 70% of young Americans would likely vote for a socialist presidential candidate. One of his campaign videos was mentioned at CPAC today. Their wish could very well be realized as self-proclaimed democratic socialist Bernie Sanders leads his party's presidential primaries.
I want to call attention to one Bernie Sanders campaign video. That video ends by saying, no, you're not free. Freedom comes from economic freedom, and you aren't economically free unless you have XYZ government program.
But the question being asked at CPAC, do Bernie Sanders and socialism's young advocates understand its history? Socialism puts society's key functions under government control via high taxes and regulation. Speakers argued that rather than guaranteeing freedom, it actually leads to the opposite.
It is a system of slavery. It is one that takes control of every single part of your life, denies you the access to the fruits of your labor.
In the 1850s, there was actually a pro-slavery radical named George Fitzhugh who said that, and he said that slavery is a form and the very best form of socialism.
Socialism is an ideology popularized by philosopher Karl Marx. It promotes violent revolution and killed an estimated 100 million people in the last century. Socialist regimes in China and Venezuela seized control through violently overthrowing the existing government. Socialist governments also come to power by democratic means, like in Nazi Germany.
People, through willful voting, choose to implement this totalitarian regime.
Young CPAC attendees say socialism is being promoted as a benevolent ideology at American universities, confusing students.
They quite literally talk about Karl Marx and the genius of Marxism, and you go to a college course or an economics course, and what do they talk about? They talk about socialism and how capitalism is responsible for all evil in the world, and how the wealthy oppressors are responsible for poverty and every other ill in this country.
I know at our campus there's a lot of big push for a lot of socialism.
Students say its influence is so great now, it's even difficult to express views beyond socialism.
I think it doesn't just boil down to worries about people being attacked, which does happen on college campuses. You see the videos of it all the time, but also just kind of being ostracized and marginalized on a college campus. I mean,
older attendees are also worried about its rising popularity.
It's a fight, like some of the speakers have said, it's a fight for the soul of America and who we are as a country.
And earlier that day, lawmakers sat down to discuss the future of social media companies, which they say haven't been too friendly to conservatives.
Talking about big tech on Friday, Senator Hawley said the government shouldn't aid companies that censor political speech.
Well, I think it's as simple as this. If Facebook and Twitter and Google, if they are not going to give conservatives the same treatment as liberals, if they're going to discriminate on the basis of political speech, then they shouldn't be getting special deals from government. It's just that simple.
For years, conservatives have accused these companies of censorship. One poll shows that 85% of Republicans and Republican-leaning independents think social media companies are intentionally censoring political viewpoints. 62% of Democrats agreed. And as for funding, data from the subsidy tracking website Good Jobs First shows that Facebook has received over $370 million in tax breaks, Google over $880 million.
And now we don't have a real marketplace because these big tech companies, who are all liberals, putting the thumb on the scale against Donald Trump, all of these companies get special deals from government, and that means that there isn't real free competition.
But viewpoints are just one of their concerns. Privacy is another, to which House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy said the data should be the users to control.
Anything on the internet that is free, you are not the customer, you are the client, because they're utilizing your data and selling it.
Facebook has already taken a big hit for violating federal privacy rules. Last year, it agreed to pay a record-breaking $5 billion fine to the Federal Trade Commission for its deceptive data practices. The company was ordered to create an independent oversight committee to watch over how Facebook handles its users' personal data.
Even in some of these companies.
The United States plans to invoke a law to boost production of key items like masks, gloves, and gowns to combat the coronavirus. That's according to Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar. The House of Representatives today passed legislation aimed at protecting children from the clutches of addiction. The measure would place broad restrictions on flavored vaping and tobacco products.
The chamber voted 213-195 in support of the Reversing the Youth Tobacco Epidemic Act on Friday.
Democrats are taking strong action to protect America's children as we pass H.R. 2339, legislation to confront the growing youth tobacco crisis in our nation.
The bill would prohibit flavored tobacco products, including menthol-flavored vaping items and cigarettes. It follows a ban on most flavored vaping products announced by the White House last month. Democrats were unhappy with the ban, which left menthol-flavored products intact and allowed every flavor for tank-based products to be sold in vape shops. Ahead of the vote, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi specifically criticized tobacco company Juul. The vape maker backed a ballot initiative that, if passed, would overturn an anti-vaping law. It later withdrew its support after spending nearly $19 million to fund it.
It was horrible, and they made it sound as if it were something that was going to protect children. They completely misrepresented.
She called the proposition a path to addiction. The legislation isn't expected to pass in the Senate.
South Carolina is holding the last presidential primary before Super Tuesday, and it's pretty super in its own right. The Palmetto State's vote will likely be a major deciding factor in the future of some candidates' campaigns, with a few possibly ending.
South Carolina, the state Joe Biden calls his firewall, but in reality, it's his fourth quarter and he needs a Hail Mary.
Are you going to win?
Yes. All right. Because South Carolina is the trajectory to winning the Democratic nomination. South Carolina looks favorable for Biden. He got an endorsement from Representative James Clyburn this week, and in a new Monmouth University poll, Biden is ahead of national frontrunner Senator Bernie Sanders.
One of the serious things we got to do is make sure that we defeat the most dangerous president in the modern history of this country, Donald Trump.
South Carolina is basically do or die for some Democratic presidential hopefuls, like Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Are you in this fight with me? Let's do this.
Senator Amy Klobuchar.
And I'm asking you to vote for me. Thank you so much, everyone.
Businessman Tom Steyer.
You know, I just don't believe that having the government take over big parts of the economy is a smart thing to do.
And former Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
Not all of the answers have to come from Washington, but more of the funding should.
Another former mayor, Mike Bloomberg, isn't on the ballot in South Carolina, focusing instead on later contests.
Coming up, several cases of recovered coronavirus patients being reinfected in China, sparking fear. That and more when we return.
I have traveled all over the world to 50 countries now, and I have never seen a production any better than this. Anywhere.
It's absolutely out of this world.
It's blown away my expectations.
It was just a superior performance that truly could bridge the world through music and dance.
Startling and breathtaking. We haven't had quite an experience like that in all the years that I've lived here, so it was special for us.
I think that I learned more in this performance than I actually do in a whole week of school.
And the beautiful costumes, and people just float. The choreography is incredible, and the storyline, beautiful, beautiful.
It's so beautiful. I'm getting teary-eyed watching. It's very moving. You feel it. You're feeling the show.
It's like a mini vacation that transported me into another place, into another world, into another culture.
When I came here tonight, I felt very dejected about the human race, about everything going on in this world. And during the performance, I just felt now there was hope for each of us individually, as well as for all of us collectively.
Shenyun was more breathtaking, more heart-wrenchingly beautiful, more amazing than I had expected. It's very difficult to put into words, actually. You just have to come see it.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
As fears of the coronavirus continue spreading around the world, several cases inside China of patients getting reinfected after recovering are sparking panic. Our reporter Tiffany Meyer brings us more.
In China recently, there were several cases of patients getting reinfected with the coronavirus after having recovered. One of them is the first confirmed case in the city of Zhuzhou, over 400 miles away from Wuhan. The patient recovered and was released from the hospital on February 9th. He then stayed in a hotel for 15 days under quarantine. After he got home on February 24th, his neighborhood hosted a big party to celebrate. But 3 days later, he was diagnosed again and found to be infected with the coronavirus a second time. 65 members who attended the celebrations were also put under quarantine. Before January 20th, when it was publicly declared the coronavirus could be transmitted between humans, no one thought there could be human-to-human transmission. Before that date, the Chinese regime had sent 2 teams of experts to Wuhan on 2 different occasions to investigate. But both teams concluded there was no evidence of human-to-human transmission. One expert explained that whenever he went, the doctors all told him there were no cases among medical staff. But later, media reports revealed there were already many instances of medical staff being infected. So why was this? The expert explained why his team wasn't able to do anything. After arriving in Wuhan, the team received instructions from higher-level officials saying that the local authorities are in charge and that the team was only there to offer help. His team arrived on January 8th in Wuhan. But the former mayor of Wuhan said in an interview with state-run media that the local authorities couldn't make a decision themselves until January 20th.
元月20号，国务院召开常务会议，确定了这个病作为乙类传染病，并进行甲类传染病的管理，而且要求属地负责。
It seems no one wanted to take responsibility for the time between January 8th to the 20th in Wuhan. And in the U.S., Senator Marco Rubio tweeted on Friday morning, the first coronavirus-related drug shortage in the U.S. is not the last. He said it's by far the single greatest threat our nation faces from the outbreak. On Tuesday, Secretary Azar confirmed to Senator Rubio that this is a wake-up call that perhaps we are overly dependent on a supply chain so heavily concentrated in one place in the world. Yesterday, Senator Rubio released a plan to combat America's supply chain risks and U.S. dependence on China for pharmaceuticals. And the U.S. House of Representatives could vote on an emergency bill aimed at providing funding for the country's coronavirus response as soon as next week. That's according to a congressional source who added negotiators are looking at approving between $6 to $8 billion in funding for the response, which is exponentially higher than the $2.5 billion the White House has requested.
Recently, rumors about the coronavirus outbreak have also been circulating in North America. Many are spreading through the Chinese messaging app WeChat, causing panic in Chinese American communities.
A city council member stepping out to clarify rumors after a recent post on China's messaging app, WeChat, claimed a person in Flushing, New York, is infected. The post circulated widely among New York's Chinese communities, prompting a sales plunge for local businesses. Lately, rumors of the coronavirus have been spreading on WeChat, an app popular both inside China and among Chinese immigrants overseas. As concern over the outbreak grows, businesses inside Chinatowns in cities like New York, Boston, and Vancouver are suffering. Some restaurant owners say most of the customers they've lost are Chinese. Some of the posts are purely rumors, but some feature alarming headlines. Recently, a public WeChat account targeting an audience of Chinese immigrants and visitors in New York published an article titled, "The U.S. Admits the Virus Outbreak Will Explode." Whistleblower says CDC is intentionally covering up, and there are over 1,000 cases in the U.S. The article has been viewed over 100,000 times on WeChat. The account boasts over 400,000 followers. Compared with this loose regulation on reports about the outbreak situation in other countries, WeChat seems to tightly restrict information about the situation in China. The app is reportedly helping China to hunt down coronavirus critics and silence critics in the U.S. Earlier this month, a nonprofit based in D.C. called Citizen Power Initiatives for China said it's preparing to file a lawsuit against WeChat. It says the app is exporting China's censorship to the U.S. Reporting by Penny Zhou, NTD News.
A Frontline medic tells us what it's like being sent to work inside China's coronavirus outbreak epicenter and the pain of seeing death. NTD's Xiaohua Gu has the details.
Intense workload, supplies shortage, and death. A frontline medic in China tells us his agony of seeing patients die from the coronavirus. His voice has been distorted to protect his identity.
Actually, at first we couldn't accept the facts. Many team members were very sad and crying. We couldn't bear it, so we would just cry behind others' backs. We can only slowly suffer through this.
Dr. Chen is among the over 700 medical staff sent to Ezhou for support. He said about 70 staff members have contracted the virus in the city central hospital where he works. With over 1 million people, Ezhou is a city only half an hour's train ride from Wuhan, the center of China's coronavirus outbreak. Chen said he and his colleagues, too, are afraid of death and infection.
Some of our team members dare not tell their family members. Do you know the first thing that some people did after they were notified of the dispatch? They took a photo with their family members, fearing they will never return.
Medics sent to Ezhou are fairly young, as the workload is intense. A 6-hour shift in a hazmat suit means lack of oxygen, lots of sweat, and no bathroom. Patients who are critically ill have little chance of survival, Chen said.
We took over about a dozen patients who were critically ill, and 6 of them have passed.
Chen told us patient situations can quickly turn bad. He said he had a patient with kidney failure and a lung that was hardened like a stone within 3 weeks of having symptoms. He hopes the outbreak will soon end. Xiaohua Gu, NTD News, New York.
Chen told us despite having support from over 700 doctors from other provinces, the city is still struggling to cope with the amount of patients it's now faced with. A shortage of medical supplies is also a problem. Ezhou used to rely on Wuhan for medical supplies, but now the city has to secure its own after the lockdown. And up next, some officials are working to phase out gifted and talented programs in New York City schools. But there's no set plan for how it's going to be done. Find out more after the break.
You're others have described China Uncensored like The Daily Show, but about China.
At the beginning, I was super excited when I got 500 views, and now the show's grown to about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One episode reached 7.9 million people. I'm a little freaked out that that many people have seen my face. In 5 years, I see China Uncensored as the sole source of edutainment worldwide.
Our investigative reporters at the Epoch Times have spent 18 months uncovering the biggest political scandal in modern history. We connected the dots around Spygate, the actions by Obama-era officials against Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Join me on Declassified as we bring you up-to-date developments on this unfolding scandal.
The future of gifted and talented programs in some New York City schools is still undecided. It's been 6 months since the city's mayor and chancellor announced they wanted to scrap the program. Some schools have already started phasing out the programs. Others are still unclear about the next steps.
Chancellor Carenza and Mayor de Blasio said in August they aim to get rid of the gifted and talented programs in the name of diversity. While the statistics do show that the programs are made up of majority white and Asian students, some point out that there is a shortage of programs to begin with, and in some communities, no gifted program at all.
I looked at many different options whenever I was looking, because she qualified, but there was never any seats. What I saw was that the gifted and talented programs were representative of the neighborhoods that they found themselves in.
Rather than expanding the gifted programs to all communities, detracking is an alternate route being considered, and some schools are already doing it. The goal is to remove the gifted program and raise the bar for all students. But some are concerned about what this will look like in the classroom.
Are we really supposed to believe that under the enrichment model, every child will get a customized education plan and a teacher will teach a class of 32 kids and be able to meet each child exactly where they are?
Recognizing the teacher's critical role in implementing detracking, educational policy researcher Hallie Potter says they must be given the proper resources to do it right.
So to do detracking well, what you want to do is have training and supports for teachers so that everyone becomes familiar with the new challenging curriculum that all students are going to have access to.
And what do parents think? One says she fears that the parent's voice is being left out of the discussion altogether.
I see a lot of things being repeated that are being challenged in other areas, but it seems like parents don't have that voice, unfortunately.
She says there should be more options for parents to choose from, not less, since all kids are different.
For me, I want to become an architectural engineer right now, so I want a more structured education.
While there are many different voices talking about the future of New York City's gifted programs, a common ground among them is that a solid plan is needed. Melina Weisskopf, NTD News, New York.
Coming up, a Chinese Olympic swimming champion is banned for 8 years over drugs. Find out about his response after the break.
Are you tired of newspapers spinning the truth and pushing false narratives? And are you looking for honest coverage of Spygate, the true story of collusion? Or the truth behind the crisis at our southern border? Or how the Chinese Communist Party is working to subvert America and our way of life? Then you need to check out the Epoch Times newspaper. It's independent, nonpartisan, and it doesn't push any political agendas. Just go to readepoch.com and try it yourself for a full month for just $1. You'll absolutely love it.
Court arbitration for sport saying today the Chinese multiple world and Olympic swimming champion Sun Yang has been banned from sport for 8 years for missing an out-of-competition test.
China's three-time Olympic gold medalist Sun Yang expressed his shock at being handed an 8-year ban on Friday for a dope test violation that ruled him out of the Tokyo Games and said he would immediately appeal the decision. The Court of Arbitration for Sport earlier accepted an appeal from the World Anti-Doping Agency against a decision by swimming's governing body to clear Sun of wrongdoing for his conduct during a 2018 test. CAS said the 8-year ban was imposed because the 28-year-old already had an earlier anti-doping rule violation against him. The Chinese swimmer is the reigning world and Olympic champion in 200 metres freestyle and won 2 gold medals in 2012 and another in 2016, but is also a controversial figure in the sport. At the Rio Games, Australian rival Mac Horton accused him of being a drug cheat and refused to share a podium with Sun at last year's World Championship, whilst the appeal hung over him. As did British swimmer Duncan Scott, who won 200 metres freestyle bronze. CAS ruled that Sun's World Championship results should remain because he passed doping control before and after the 2018 test, when his entourage smashed vials containing blood samples taken out of competition.
An 84-year-old woman sunk a putt during an Ole Miss basketball game to win a new car. Marianne Wakefield putted a golf ball 94 feet across a basketball court and into a hole under a sign for a 2020 Nissan Altima. Even though Ole Miss eventually lost the game, Ms. Wakefield walked away with a car worth at least $24,000. Just last month, a fan sank a 90-foot putt during a Baylor University basketball game for a $5,000 prize. And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox.